Welcome to the CannaBiz Success Show. If you're a cannabis company owner or operator who's ready to scale your business, grow your profits, and plant the seeds to take your business to new heights, this show is for you. We'll share expert insights, industry trends, and actionable strategies to help you blaze a trail of success in the cannabis industry.
Welcome back to another episode of the Cannabis Success Show. We have a great guest for you today, Albert Gutierrez from MedPharm. We have an episode just talking about research. I mean, we haven't had that on the show yet. We dive deep into the different aspects of cannabis research, and for me as a consumer, I fall into that more educated consumer that's doing research, and so this was just fascinating for me. I've learned a lot. I think it's a special episode. I think if you're looking to learn more about cannabis and how you can use it for medicinal purposes. Brett, what did you think about the show?
It was great. Albie was great to talk to. The work that they're doing really does seem like it's on the front line of the research and kind of elevating cannabis into a true medicinal product, right? That potentially has pharmaceutical applications and things along those natures, with IV drips, things that they're experimenting with, the tinctures and the gum, the gels that they're using to cater to different types of consumers who may have physical conditions that prevent them from using it other methods. It was just fascinating. So we talk a lot about consumer education and stuff like that in there too. So I'd stick around and listen to the whole thing. It was a good episode.
Yeah, Albie gets into the potential reschedule and what the effect of that is going to be on research. MedPharm Holdings is one of the first companies to have a research license. He goes into what all that means and some of the very exciting things they're doing with Alzheimer's research. Stick around to the end because he really gives some good tips on what to look out for, what to research if you're looking for a cannabis product for a particular ailment for medical purposes, and he really details that out. That's what's coming up right now on the Cannabis Success Show. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to another episode of the Cannabis Success Show, where we're diving deep into some of the most pressing topics in the industry and talking to innovative leaders. I'm your host, Guillermo Rodriguez. I'm joined by my co-host, Brett Adams. Brett, how are you today?
I'm doing good, Guillermo. It's good to be back. It's been a week or two since I've been on, so happy to jump back in.
Yeah, we were doing some travel, and we were in the Michigan market at the Flower Expo last week, so it's good to be back. We're fresh off of that, and Albert, you're in the Michigan market, so we'd love to hear your take and what's going on there. Today we got a really special guest who's really at the forefront of cannabis research, product development. Joining me today is Albert Gutierrez. He's the president of MedPharm Holdings. He's been in the industry quite a while, over 10 years of experience in the cannabis industry, and really a driving force behind MedPharm's success. So we'll really get into that. Initially, you were CEO, and now you're president of that business. Albert, Albie, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, thank you, guys. I'm excited to be here and looking forward to having some discussions together.
Absolutely. So first, we'd just like to start off with, can you give us the backstory of, you've been in for a while. I think you were in the very first rec market, which is Colorado, from what I understand. You just kind of give us your trajectory over the years of like how you got into the cannabis industry and what's been going on for the last 10 years or so of your career.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy because I started off after I got my bachelor's and was working on my master's. I was in tech, and so I've always been kind of an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur. I've had different businesses. I was working at a tech company, and then I got introduced to a guy by the name of Andy Williams, who owned a company called Medicine Man, if you're familiar with Medicine Man from back in the day. So Andy was the CEO of Medicine Man, and I'd been doing some side projects for him as a consultant. And finally, he said, "Hey, come over to Medicine Man with me full time. Help me to strategize on some of the different business development things we're doing and some of the acquisitions and whatnot." And I was like, "Hey, why not?" It's cannabis was just getting going, at least on the rec side at the time, and so we started to think about different ways that we could look at different companies to acquire. And so through Medicine Man Technologies, which is a publicly traded company, I was helping with some of those different acquisitions. And we started to come up with a concept at the time of what could be what's called now MedPharm, but a company that really focused on research and understanding the what, why, and how behind cannabinoids, terpenes, and other excipients that come together to help people. And we wanted to see what that looked like from an operational standpoint. One, to fund the research, and two, to be able to bring this to life and show the legitimacy of and the medicinal value within the plant. And so we started to build it out. We built out the plans for it. And finally, two of the partners who got involved had come to Andy and said, "Hey, we need Albie to really just take this on as the CEO and run the company, because he knows what he's doing. He's shown and proved himself." And so, I stepped in and since the beginning, but I really took over as the CEO in 2016. We started the company in 2015. But our goal was really to do that research, right? And so in the early days, and even still, the research has lacked. And we were looking for ways to show how cannabis can help people. We always hear about it anecdotally. We always hear about it even in the news. But the problem is that, the federal government says that there's no research to show that. And so, we built out the company. We started getting operational. I went through all of the hoops and barriers and all the nightmares that I could give you over and over as far as what it takes to start the company like this. And I always tell people, if you're trying to get into this industry, it's not for the faint of heart. It's not easy. It's not like we're making money hand over fist all the time. It's nothing like that. You have to be ready to get your butt kicked day in and day out. And so as we built out the company, we, like I said, went through all the different licensing processes, got operational in 2017, started our first sales in early 2018, built it out into different products, verticals, and different brands that we've created over the years, from Batch, which is our number one brand. We are the number one cartridge in Colorado, to our Aliviar brand, to our Nuo brand, which is now coming out. And then the Become brands and the Awareness brand. I mean, we have a number of brands that we've created for different consumers, different times, different needs. What we've really done well is create standardization in how we create products. And so what we've done to do that is create GMP and GAP standards within, and also get certifications to support that, right? So we know that on the federal scale, GMP is required. And so we've actually become certified, not just saying, "Oh, we're GMP compliant," like a lot of places are. We're actually certified in good manufacturing practices to show that we standardize everything we do. We have processes that go around it, and that you're going to get a consistent, reliable dosage form every time that hits you the same way, right? So if you have a customer who comes in and uses your tincture as an example for epilepsy, you're getting that same effect every time from our product. You're not just getting some willy-nilly, did it this way one time, did it this way another time, that you might get sometimes from other manufacturers. And that's not a knock on them. That's just how they operate. But we don't. And so as the years went on, we really wanted to create that framework for research to say, hey, we're helping people. How do we articulate that? And so in 2018, we drafted a bill. I helped to write the bill in Colorado to create a research framework out here that allowed us to do research, because we weren't allowed to do research at the federal level at the time. And so we wanted to create a framework within Colorado where we could use our products, do our research through the Marijuana Enforcement Division in the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment groups, to keep them involved and make sure that we can do the research without somebody coming in and just squashing everything we're doing. So I helped to write the bill in 2018. We got it passed in 2019. They messed it up when they passed it, because there's so many revisions that go on. Everybody gets their hands in it. We had to make some updates. In 2020, we finally got the first research license that was allowed in Colorado. We still have that. We hold the number 00001 license here in Colorado, which I'm really excited about. And then from there, we also started to look into DEA registration to be able to have a DEA Schedule 1 license. And so in our facility here in Colorado, we have everything from PhD chemists, analytical chemists, compound pharmacists, and a slew of others expertise to make sure that we can bring some of these products to life, but also the research to life. So we got that license in 2020. We got the DEA Schedule 1 license in 2020, 2021. And we've been working on doing federal research now for a few years. Our focus is more on neuropharmacology. I'm talking a lot, so you can always shut me up. But neuropharmacology are matters of the brain, because cannabis is something that can cross the blood-brain barrier. We want to leverage the cannabinoids and their anti-inflammatory properties and other properties to help see if we can retard, decrease, or improve completely different disease states like Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, and others. And so we're doing that. And we've, along the way, we've created some great products within our lines, from vapes to tinctures to pills to creams, all over. We've expanded it into other states. We're in Colorado, Michigan, Iowa. We'll soon be coming to Missouri. We're looking at a couple other target acquisition states that we're working on. But we're just growing very carefully. We are a strong group within the MedPharm, and then as a greater group, the Bud and Mary's ecosystem that we've created. And we're creating some great products that are going to go and support either patients for their medical needs or others for their recreational purposes.
Yeah, that is. Thank you for that background. That is pretty innovative to be so early on, particularly in a legacy market state like Colorado, and to already be focusing on research, because the effects of pricing wouldn't have come many years later. But as you look back, it's been quite a few years. Have you, because the other challenge is not just the research, but it's getting the information out to folks as well, right? And the consumers are getting more educated, but it's still slow. How have you seen the fruits of your labor in terms of what the research has done in terms of educating the consumer, and really moved consumers either into the market or shifted consumers away from maybe just the high THC kind of type of market?
Yeah, the trend.
Yeah. No. The great part about it is I get messages every week from consumers who have messaged us and said, "This product has helped me." I've had patients who have had cancer and who are dealing with some hormone issues, who've used our tincture to manage that. I've had patients message us with our vapes because they have problems sleeping. I've had patients, all the different conditions that exist. I've had patients, and we've done some baseline research with Alzheimer's patients who have been able to leverage one of our tinctures to help with their overall cognition, as well as their overall demeanor, right? And those are the things we measure, is like as a caretaker, are you also getting some relief? Because it's a lot to deal with in Alzheimer's patients if you've never had. And then one of the reasons that we focused on Alzheimer's, and we still are, is because I had a great grandmother who raised me when I was little. I was raised by all women. And my great grandmother, who I used to go to her house, she got Alzheimer's eventually. So the woman who helped raise me and take care of me eventually got Alzheimer's, and I had to take care of her. And so it's a very hard thing to watch. It's a hard thing to manage, because those people who contract Alzheimer's and dementia, they can become very irate because they don't know what's going on. They're on the move because they're trying to run away sometimes. My grandma used to do that. We always knew her as the runner. But those are the things that we have to deal with, unfortunately. And so one of the things we measure is how have the caretakers' lives been helped, and that's always helpful. But also how have the overall cognitive abilities of that patient been improved. And we've seen some really good, promising baseline data, which is really important. These research studies take a lot of money. They take a lot of time. There's a lot of governing bodies you have to go through review boards to make sure it's safe. We have to go through different steps from the Colorado Department of Public Health, and as well as the Marijuana Enforcement Division, to get it approved. And so it's a lot of pieces to get one thing done, right? And I hope one day that's streamlined a little bit, but we're still working on that. But in the meantime, back to your question regarding the fruits of the labor, we have seen positive results. We received some money to do a study on it's from the state of Colorado, but to see if what you're seeing on the shelf at a dispensary is matching up with what's actually there. So making sure that it's a one-to-one, because we have to test everything as far as what goes out to the public. We have to test it through our state tracking system as well. Well, we did that, and we found some really good results. We published those. We got those into a publication, and we get more researchers wanting to reach out because of that. So that's important for us to have those abilities to research. On the other hand, when we're looking at some of the research we're doing now, what we're looking at is microglia in the brain and looking at a way to combat inflammation within the brain. So we're using minor cannabinoids and others to help to combat some of those different disease states that are in the brain. So we'll inflame it, we'll go and combat it with certain cannabinoids, and we have different patents on different delivery methods within those cannabinoids. So if you think of one that goes within the mouth, kind of like an oral gel, we have a patent on that with cannabinoids. And so we're looking at different ways that we can introduce it to patients who maybe can't swallow, for instance, and allowing them to still get that relief and delivery to their brain, their mouth, whatever it may be. And so, yeah, we've seen some great responses from that. We're still doing a lot of that baseline research. We're working on a couple other studies I can't say a whole lot about right now, but they're really exciting for the next level and phase of growth with what we're doing with the new drug development and discovery within the FDA.
That's just fascinating.
It is.
My grandmother, yeah. I do remember those first days of my grandmother when she started developing dementia, and what you mentioned is that the most dangerous part of it is when someone can, an elderly person can leave their house, not know where they're going, be disoriented, but just the effect on the caretakers as well, and just how, through this research, people who otherwise wouldn't look to cannabis as a solution are now starting to do that, and not just an effect on the patient, but on the caretakers, which are usually family, right? And it's just a ripple effect that can really help a family as well. One of the things you mentioned there was the essentially talking about the various different form factors, right? Can you talk a little bit more on why that's important? Like for someone who's looking into cannabis, why it's different to consume it from a gummy or flower versus a tincture, and what the research has uncovered about how to consume it for medicinal purposes.
Sure. It's first and foremost, it's probably a preference, right? You have people who want, for like the perfect example, I'm not necessarily an edibles person because when it hits your body and you're starting to digest it, it actually turns into a different chemical, let's say. Right. And so for me, it hits me very hard when I take an edible in. So edibles for me are something I don't consume. Others love them, and that's a better form of consumption for them because they don't like to smoke. Maybe the inhalation bothers their lungs or their throat, right? And so I like to smoke, whether it's a vape or flower. I'm up for both if I consume. And so it just depends on obviously preference, but there's not. I think you get a better delivery overall from something like a tincture, and it's really simplified ingredients, right? For instance, when we do make our tincture, we're not adding a bunch of junk and carrier oils and all that stuff that kind of like pollute the delivery of it. We're using a very pure form of an oil that'll help deliver it to your digestive system right away. And I think that's really important to understand because you're getting a lot of companies, again, not to knock them, but just there are companies out there who put a lot of different things in their tincture. And if you're going to be somebody who's trying to remove alcohol dependence off of, remove yourself from being dependent on alcohol, you don't want something that's going to have a tincture where you're using alcohol as the base or some form of alcohol. And so those are things to think about. So that's one thing. You do get a lot of benefits from inhalation. A lot of people are like, oh, it's smoking. Actually, research has shown within cannabis that when you do smoke, the cannabinoids help to repair a lot of portion in your lungs. So we've seen positive impacts there. But some people don't like to smoke, like I said, so maybe an oral version will be better. Some people can't swallow. We've had patients who are cancer patients who have throat cancer. And so that's why we've developed the gel that you can dissolve into the buccal of your mouth, but it still gives delivery straight to your brain, right? So there's different ways to do that. And for us, it's really about having options for different types of patients. We've developed a proprietary and patented method to be able to create like an IV drip. So if a patient's in a hospital, maybe we could give them some relief without giving something like an opioid for once. And so we'll be doing research on those types of things in the future and seeing their effectiveness, right? And so those are the types of different delivery methodologies as well as thought processes we have to help to give patients an option whether they want to use it one way or another. I remember in the early days when we started to develop the one for the IV drip, for instance, we had the Department of Public Health come up in here and they brought their chief doctor and all this stuff and said, you guys are going to be making stuff for people that are just shooting up in their arms. And we said, guys, that's not what we're doing at all. Just because we have a clean room and we can make an IV drip doesn't mean I'm going to go put it out as a product where somebody can shoot it up. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to create an alternative to opiates to a problem within what we've seen in the community and help to create a new delivery method that can help give relief to patients still when they're in pain. And that's what. And once they saw it, it's funny because that same medical doctor, that chief medical doctor, came to them and said, "You guys blew this way out of proportion. This is crazy that you even came to me for this. These guys are doing great research, and I look forward to working with them." So it was really exciting to hear that because we are always fighting. I talked about this earlier, but we're always fighting for like respect. People think that a lot of times we're just an industry that goes in, we're doing open blast butane in our backyards and our garage and just making these products on the ground. And, it's just this crazy thinking of what may have been at one point, but isn't anymore. And we've matured. And so it's exciting to get that respect when we can get it and also not have to fight when we don't have to, because it's always a fight.
Yeah. That was a big topic at the Flower Expo that we were just at, is the legitimacy of the business and things like that. I don't want to knock the expo. The expo was fantastic. There was a lot of good people there, a lot of good businesses, and overall, I think the expo was a success. But the venue that they chose was a little odd. It was a kind of a abandoned lumber yard is kind of the best way that I can explain it. Okay. And so, the main building where they had the dispensary and things like that, like there were broken windows in the building, and it just kind of seemed like they shoved us, and maybe it wasn't the expo, maybe it was the city, but they just kind of shoved us over and said, nope, you have to be over in this area. We don't want you out in the main field, right? And but you look around, there's billions of dollars that are in businesses that are being generated every day, just in that venue alone. And it's like there's some legitimacy to what we're doing. The tax rates that they pay are absurdly high, but they're contributing back to the states and to the federal government in that form. So that was a big topic of discussion amongst a lot of the retailers and stuff that we saw there.
It is crazy because a lot of times we are looked at as, the bastard child, for lack of a better term, right? But at the same time, when money's needed, who's the piggy bank? It's us, more tax. We'll just add another tax to the cannabis industry. And we've had to fight that a lot over the years. We've had to, I remember in the early days, there were so many of the legacy companies and the early, pioneers in this industry that we all worked together to combat them adding just another tax because they just want more money for one thing or another, but called it parks. But we're like, okay, where'd all the money for the other parks go? Because we haven't seen that, come to light yet. So we still do that, and it's a lot harder now because it feels like it's so fragmented so much more. As it's grown, it's not as tight as it used to be. So a lot of the guys that I came up with, who were I call them the pioneers, and the groups that we originally worked with, the Los Sueños farms, and those guys from way back when, the Medicine Mans, the Medically Corrects, and the Dixies, and all those companies who we were still around, but different ownerships and whatnot that have changed over time. I feel like we've kind of sectioned off a little bit more now. Pulling us together is always important. We call it cooperation, or we've called it cooperation over the years, where we compete, but we always also work together, because if not, we wouldn't be where we are. This industry would have died a long time ago, especially with all the taxes we paid. I mean, give you an example. I just paid a few $100,000 in taxes just this past month, just to cover our tax bill. So we're paying them. You're right. It's always nice, but you're right. When they get a chance to push us aside and throw us into a side room, well, that fits their agenda. Whoever is in charge of those facilities. But, I think it's important to still continue to band together. We got to figure out better ways to do that moving forward.
Yeah. So my grandmother also suffered from Alzheimer's. So I had to watch that play out. And when you talked about him getting angry, there's a specific memory that I have of my grandmother. And it was, I don't remember how old I was, probably, 6, 7, 8, something like that, when she passed. But we were in her living room, and I think I had grabbed the remote control for the TV, and it set her off for some reason, to the point where she grabbed my arm and like grabbed it really hard. And I look up at her, and it's just blank, right? She doesn't know who I am. I can tell that, and she doesn't know what she's doing. Unfortunately, but yeah, so I applaud your research in that area. I think that's a big area of discussion that we can have. If somebody in the retail space or in the development space of the industry is wanting to elevate to the next level, and they're looking at, what's next and innovation and things like that, I'm sure the DEA license was not cheap, but do you feel that other industry experts and brands and things like that should explore it?
The license itself isn't what's expensive. It's having the facility that allows for the license to be attached to it that's expensive. The license is a few $100. The controls that you need to have in place in order for the DEA to approve your facility in order to conduct this kind of research, that's what becomes expensive. You're looking at a perfect example. You have to have a certain kind of safe. It's not a regular safe. And it's probably about $15,000 to $20,000 just for the safe. Okay. Then you talk about the camera systems you have to have involved, the backup systems, the failover systems for that, the systems for fire so they can approve you. There's a lot of different things that go into getting your facility approved by the DEA. Do I think it's worth it? Absolutely. I always look for more collaborators. We need more researchers. It's still hard, even though we have the licenses and everything. It can be a challenge to get universities on board. We have a few good partners who I'm excited to work with, and we're getting some really good traction nowadays. But it took a long time to get there, because I remember going even over to the Anschutz Medical Campus down the street for University of Colorado, and they wouldn't even talk to us at the time. Their director of compliance was like, "We can't do anything. Our hands are tied. We want to do something, but we can't." Now it's like, okay, we can have conversations, but maybe necessarily they can't act, or maybe another division can. And so we've got some university partners who are like, "Hey, we're all in. You guys have what you need. We understand the risks. Let's move together." And that's exciting too, right? But it is quite the investment, because you talk about that portion of it, and then you talk about the level of expertise you need in the, from PhD chemists, I mentioned analytical chemists, compound pharmacists. Those wages aren't cheap. And so it's an investment, but I think it's an investment to me, in my mind, it's an investment obviously into bettering the world from where we started, and being able to articulate some great research that we're going to do. But also it's an investment into my team, because they're excited to bring this to light. And also, in the next few years, I always think about, like, how can I make them feel excited about work? How can I, because money's one thing, right? Team's another, and we have great culture. We have a great team, but also, like, I want them to get recognition. And so one day I always say that my dream is for one of them to get some form of Nobel Prize. I want us to be known. I want us to get published into a big scientific journal like Science. I want all these things to come to fruition, because I want people to be excited and passionate about what they do. And I wholeheartedly mean that. And I say that because a lot of people say, "Oh, that's the company line." It's not. I'm that person. I'm excited for our team, what we've built here, the culture we've built, and my tenure for our employees shows it, because they don't leave. My employees do not leave me, and I love that about it, because in the cannabis industry, the average tenure for an employee is about 6 months at best.
It's starting to be that way for every industry now.
And I'm telling you, I have people 6, 7, 8 years now that have been here. I have people who've been here just 2 years, but they're like, "I'm never leaving." They just don't want, and I love that, right? Because I've created something special for them to feel valued and excited, and they're here every day. They're not calling in. I just really get excited about that. So anyway,
Ali, let's stick on that topic of research, and what do you see over the next year? I mean, we talk about the potential reschedule having a huge impact on research, right? For someone like you, that you've already been in that space, how would the reschedule affect you personally, and what do you see in terms of research? Is that something that you're excited about over the next year? How do you see that playing out?
Yeah, it's exciting from the standpoint. I think it starts to help remove some more of the stigma of what's been created over the years with cannabis. Um, you know, for years, colored groups and communities have been targeted for having cannabis, right? And we've seen that in one way or another. So my my goal with a lot of the research too is to legitimize that somebody carrying cannabis because they're using it for whatever issue, anxiety or whatever, isn't pulled over, and the research shows, hey, this person does actually have this condition and they're using it because of that, so they're not getting arrested for it and put back in jail, and that's not happening. For me, research, the rescheduling does some of that. For our company, it helps to create probably other partnerships with other groups who might want to now step in to more of the research in cannabis, which is exciting. It might help with investors who want to help to fund some of this research, because that's important for us too in order to get this done. So from that standpoint, I think it's great. From the standpoint of what we can do right now, the good news is we've created that framework, and I helped to create that framework in Colorado. So that's not going to hold us back from being able to conduct research. So it doesn't change from that standpoint. What it does change and what it does help, if this carries over, and I always hear, oh, it's going to happen. I always hear, it's definitely going to change, the tax codes for us. But that would create more funding for us to be able to, move these projects forward. And the tax codes changing is huge for our industry, because our industry is getting beaten up left and right now. I mean, our number of licenses has dropped by, I think, 30 to 40% over the past 2 years. I mean, that's crazy, right? Those are licensed operators, whether it's dispensaries or others in Colorado. And the industry is down as a whole about 25% to 30% just over the past 2-3 years. And so I think that helps to move us forward in the sense that we can save some dollars, act like a real business, take the write-offs that we need to take as a business that we're not allowed to take right now. And so that's exciting. For us, it's we've done a really good job over the years at adapting to the industry needs, and also looking at what things are impacting our bottom line. And so luckily, because of that and our ability to pivot and our innovative ways, we've been able to kind of stay ahead of a lot of that. But when you look at the rescheduling, I think it's all right now for political gain, which kind of is BS to me. I'd rather see descheduling happen. If we're going to do it, let's get serious about it and just do it all the way across the board. And that would make me more excited. But I still see some value, like I mentioned earlier, in some of the rescheduling items. For us as a research company, we're going to still keep plugging away. If we get it, great. That's best case scenario, but I'm always a plan for the worst, hope for the best type of guy.
Yeah, I think I just read an article the other day, and they were going through the descheduling versus rescheduling, and rescheduling, at least from a logistics standpoint, doesn't do a whole lot, right? Because you still can't transport it across state lines, all that stuff. Whereas with descheduling, you can, right? So yeah, I think you're right. I think the rescheduling, there's a little bit of political points, that's always the game, right? But I think they're trying to score some there.
They leave it up in the air, right? It's still up in the air. Oh, they got to do the review and all this blah, blah, blah. It's like, by that time, the elections happened. And then we're back into this, because we've heard all this talk before last election. And it's like, by that time, it's the election's over, and then they can just kind of let it fade away. And then the next election, it'll happen again. So I never get excited about anything until it actually is done, because I've just been burned too many times getting excited about this kind of stuff. So
yeah,
we ask it on every podcast. I think
exactly
the same thing.
Your company
really
specifically would benefit, though, especially from the R&D tax credit side.
Right.
Those are very generous, but they're also very complicated. And so you would need to have.
We've applied for it before, actually, or tried to. And originally it was just through the state one, so we couldn't really get it done. Now that we have the DEA one, I think we can still benefit. We could benefit from it.
True.
But because we're still involved on the other side in federally illegal activity, our tax team has been kind of hesitant to do that. So like, just don't rattle things too much yet. But I don't know. I'm riskier. I always tell them, let's just do it. But that's I don't know. I wouldn't be in cannabis if I wasn't risky anyway, right? So that's just.
Yeah, I think Trump finally came out with some comments on it, and then he mentioned another announcement that he's going to make about Florida. I don't know what it is. I haven't speculated, but luckily, like you said, it's political, but it's helpful on both sides. It seems like, and so somebody's got to take advantage of it, and that's why I feel like, to me, it's got to get done. It seems on track. I heard the DA has gotten through 90% of the comments, and 95% of them are in favor or positive comments, and it's a record volume of comments.
Yeah.
And so it just seems to me that this is up for grabs for somebody, either party, to use this, for their advantage or for support. And I wonder what Trump's talking about, what exactly he's going to say about Florida and with the vote coming up there. But I'm going to differ from you and just really say I do think it's going to happen. I do think they need some points, and it's going to happen before the election. But nobody knows.
I'm hopeful, but man, I've been burned on some of this stuff so much. I think color me pessimistic until I see it happen. I have to think that way too, right? I have to protect the business in that way of like, okay, it's not going to happen, because if I overshoot it and then it doesn't happen, then we're in trouble because we're moving the wrong way. But if we kind of hold back and watch, like many are doing, we kind of see what goes on. But I'm hopeful too. I'm just like, stop posturing, guys. Like, make action it already. If you're going to do it, let's quit talking about it. Let's be about it. And I'm more of that way. So.
Yeah, I'm hopeful. You made a comment earlier. You said the word fragmented. And markets are fragmented too, right? It's the world we live in.
Yeah.
And we have listeners that are in all kinds of different states, right? One of the things that I wanted to ask you is, from a consumer, a patient standpoint, for those that may be in markets without access, like Brett mentioned, we were just in Michigan. A lot of product from outside the Michigan market is coming in. A lot of the markets are dealing with unregulated product. What should consumers look out for? I mean, I think it's easy to say in Colorado, you can find your brand. They can listen to this podcast, know what you're about, the research, how your products are tested. But for those who are looking into cannabis for sleep or different medical reasons, if you're in a non-regulate or a market without a medical program or reg program, what do you really need to know in terms of, like, I'm going to try a hemp-derived product or something that's not regulated? Anything that consumers could benefit in terms of learning how to access market?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's really hard to say how well their or what their testing standards are. I've had people who have tried a gummy from the hemp market, tiny piece, and they were just in another orbit. They're in Pluto, right?
Mm-hmm.
From a really tiny piece. And so, that goes to tell me that the homogeneity is off from what they were saying was a 10 milligram piece, right? It's probably a lot more. And so testing is always so important. And so I always say, know what you're getting. It's really hard, but I mean, hopefully there's some tests to say that this really is 10 milligrams. If they're saying 10 or 25, whatever it may be, that's important to understand. If you're really going to dig deep and you're one of those consumers who really wants to know the sources, you always want to find out, what kind of pesticides are used in production, right? We're heavily scrutinized for what type of pesticides we can even use. So a lot of places don't check that, especially if it's coming from, like a hemp outdoor facility. They got to spray, and who knows what kind of sprays they're using. What kind of metals testing? Have they done metals testing? Because a lot of times you get heavy metals in some of those products, or even in the packaging. That if you're thinking of vape, for instance, metals can leach into the oil that you might be vaping. So that's another thing to think about. And those are the things that we have to test for everyone. Residual solvents, right? What other things are being put into that product to help produce it, and did they completely get out all the alcohol, so you're not vaping that in your lungs? Those are tests that we have to go through. So those are things that I would look at to see if there's some background on it. I don't know, how if you walk into a head shop and you ask if they have those COAs, but you're asking me, that's what I would look at, right? But I'm also a lot more involved than most people are in what the processes are to make these products. If I was a consumer also stepping in, I would look at the cannabinoid content. What are you looking to do? Maybe understand what cannabinoids you're trying to target. For sleep, it's more like a CBN type of product. A reset on your body because you've been heavily consuming. Try a CBG product. You're trying to relax and get some relief from pain, CBC and some THC products. So, there's a lot of things I think about, and it's probably a little bit more complex than others would and want. But those are some of the things I think are really important. Those are actually vital, right? Because you don't know what other people are cutting their products with. So you always want to look at the back of the product too. I'd say look and see if there's any propylene glycol in there products being cut with for like vaping, not necessarily for food products, but for like vaping. Is there MCT oil that's being added to that vape? Is there any other harmful diluents? And there's a whole list of them. You can even look online. Vitamin E acetate is another one. There was that big volley scare years ago. But those are things I would look at and see what was used in production if possible, and their ingredients obviously as usual. So
yeah. So I hear you saying is that it's going to be a risk if you're in a non-regulated market or purchasing from a smoke shop, because I agree with you that I don't think you're going to get any education in a smoke shop, and these questions are just like not going to be heard, or it's going to go over their head, and most smoke shops will. Although there's been more that I've seen that are now targeting a little bit more educated consumer, but for the most part,
and you get some. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, go ahead.
But no, I was saying you get some of the companies who are hip to that, and they do want to provide a good experience. And there's a lot of them, I should say, not some, but there are a lot that want to provide a good experience and do take the time to create messaging around that and do their own due diligence to make sure that their suppliers are the right ones. And so just you can get some of that information at the stores. You do get a lot of the store staff who are very big on making sure they're giving good experiences and also understanding the products as well. So they're getting more education. So I think it's evolving. I always think of it as like Colorado 2014, 15, right? We're just kind of getting going. Like, what are the right things? It's that whole forming, storming, norming, performing thing. Like, we're trying to figure things out. We're bumping into each other. We're not sure what's right, what's wrong. Then regulations come. And then we're still kind of doing the same thing. Then regulations come and it gets better and better. And so I think that it's going to continue to evolve and get better as long as it's not outlawed, as we're seeing it could be in the next year. I doubt that'll happen. But if it does, that's a whole other ballgame. But if it doesn't, I think it'll continue to evolve to show the legitimacy of what that side of, the hemp side of things is doing. And I think that could have a big impact on the cannabis, the regulated cannabis industry. I know that in Colorado, our marijuana enforcement division has taken control over all cannabinoids, basically, that are being introduced to the market, whether it's on the hemp side or the regulated side, which I think helps to create some good barriers and parameters for those people to operate within and around. So,
yeah. You're in Michigan market too, so that's a huge distinction between how those two markets are being handled, correct?
Yeah. Michigan is another beast. We're learning a lot about Michigan. There's a lot of, I'm going to call it craziness, for lack of a better term, going on out there. And as we saw, corruption with one of the most recent busts that went on. And so I think what's happening right now is a lot of companies are dying off in Michigan, just like they have in Colorado, but at a much faster rate, right? We're seeing prices fall much more rapidly in Michigan than we have in any other market, even faster than like Oklahoma, right? And so I think that there's a lot of reasons for that, one being a lot of corruption within that market, but also we're seeing the downfall of a lot of these companies because the corruption is drowning them out much faster than anything else. I think that that's going to correct itself over the next, but it's the question is, do you as a company out there have the capital to withstand that rain and that storm? Us, we're watching. We're keeping an eye on things. We're trying to pivot and do our best to continue to be competitive. But it is a bloodbath out there, and it's a fight.
And I think one of the other issues with them is they also issued too many licenses, right? I mean,
oh, for sure.
I heard somebody saying the other day that they issued over 1,000 licenses in Michigan, and Ohio just went, legal. So they're going out. I think they said they have like 138 licenses. So, I mean, they just artificially flooded the market with all these licenses. So now, I mean, really the only way to be competitive is to, drop your prices and compete, and all that stuff in that market. From a consumer standpoint, right? I'm just full disclosure, I've never consumed cannabis, right? It's not that I'm opposed to it. It's not that I wouldn't be in this industry if I was. I think there are some health benefits. I think a lot of people can benefit from it, probably myself included on some certain things. But I've just never been really in a position, right? When I was growing up, it was illegal and then I lived in Florida for a while. It's not legal recreationally there. So really just in the last 2 years is really when I've been in an area where it's permissible, it's reasonable, but I have a lot of questions, right? Like you're talking about, like, I want to make sure that if I do, I'm getting the highest quality product that I can and that it's, safe for me to consume and, all of that stuff. And so, the cannabis market as a whole, I think could really learn from consumer education efforts and packaging and labeling and stuff like that to really make sure that just from transparency perspective, making sure that we have all the information that we need, people like me who are willing to go down that road. We're willing to partake and participate in the market, but we want to do it responsibly and make sure that it's a good experience. So
and good operators want you to do that, right? Good operators want you to have a positive experience, so you can come back and say, "Yeah, this helped me enjoy it," and that's from our standpoint, that's what we've always been about.
Yeah. To your point earlier about consistency, I mean, it only takes one. Brett has his first experience be a really bad experience with that gummy that you mentioned earlier, and like he's turned away for a really long time. And I know I've had some of those bad experiences, but that didn't turn me away because I'm not from Florida like Brett. But we've talked a lot about. I think this has been a great episode because someone's going to listen into this. You gave a lot of good information about how to do your research. What are the things that you need to look at? Everything from the extraction method to the cannabinoids to what you're really looking for. And I think someone could really listen into that, as well as what's unique about you and your story in your business is you're backing it up with research. And I think it's not absolutely necessary for some people, but that's really where we are. We know that cannabis is beneficial, but a lot of people just really need that research before they can look into it. And so that's a lot of great work that you're doing. Thank you for that, because that's our goal here on our podcast is to educate, to destigmatize, and to help each other. So I think that educational piece is a big piece of driving revenue, right? Driving extra revenue in a consumer segment that otherwise wouldn't be here. And that's the curious. That's the first ones that have tried cannabis. We're getting close to the end as we're wrapping up. Do you have any thoughts can you share some thoughts on, present cannabis industry market versus what you're predicting for the future, or what you hope to see in the coming years?
Yeah. The current market we've seen kind of unfolding in different states with the vapes and the flower, and I think that one that becomes obviously more normal. I think what people are going to look for is more specialized dosage forms that cater to their needs in the future, right? and on a grander scale. So you think of walk into a CVS pharmacy or wherever you may go, Walgreens, and you find something that goes on to your knee, for instance. We have that in the industry already, right? But I think it's a lot more effective. And so I think we'll see that roll out on a much grander scale as we start to legitimize cannabis more and remove the different laws that prohibit that. And then also think about different ways to create new delivery methods so people can consume for their purpose. And so if somebody has an earache, for instance, we might see a dosage form that caters directly to the ear and helps give relief there, for instance. So I think more specialized dosage forms for targeted areas is going to be something that's really big. We're going to see a lot more research for diseases, gastrointestinal diseases, for instance, that we're seeing some positive strides in right now. We're Crohn's disease as an example, and other diseases that just maybe haven't even been thought about before. So when I think about the future of cannabis and research, I also think about how to speed up the development so we can get these out much quicker. And so a lot of research is being done right now on organoids. And so I think it'll be exciting to take cerebral organoids and see how we can create concoctions of cannabinoids and terpenes and other excipients that can quickly target diseases within humans. And so I think that that's something that I want to focus on in the next few years that will bring much more rapid development and relief to patients, obviously, but also rapid results to governing bodies so we can show that it is effective and safe, right? Safe and effective is obviously the one and two steps within it all. So leveraging that information along with some AI to help model how we can target these diseases, I think is going to be the way of the future. And that's where I plan on kind of focusing in the next few years.
Yeah, that's hugely exciting and what can happen. And we're going to continue sharing those stories like what you shared about your grandmother. And I think that's what it's going to take is people just listen to these stories. I recently had a friend reach out to me because she had her mother had cancer and she was trying to access the Texas compassionate use program, and I was actually able to provide a link for her, and she's like, "Thank you, it worked." And I was like, "Wow." Actually, nobody had ever reached out to me before and accessed it, and it's been something good here in Texas, and these kinds of stories are just happening everywhere. So we got to keep sharing them, and I appreciate you sharing some of your personal stories about that. So, thanks again. It was a pleasure having you on the show. Before we wrap up, how can people find you? How can people find your brands? What markets are you in to make sure that, someone listening in can go Google, find out more about your products and brands and be able to connect with you?
Yeah, for sure. You can find us in Colorado, Missouri, Michigan, Iowa. We will be coming to other states near you soon, but those are the regulated markets that we're currently in. Our brands are Batch, which is our big heavy-hitting THC brand. We have Become, which is a mixture of different cannabinoids as vapes. We also have the Nuo brand, which I mentioned, which is more like a lifestyle brand. We've got creams and tinctures and pills in there. And then we have an awareness brand, which is a social equity brand I started a few years ago to help donate funds directly to groups who are focused on combating some of the different disparities that have been occurring within Black and Latino communities specifically, and others. And so we've partnered with different groups, and we actually give them money and create new products that are specific to those groups that we can donate money consistently to over the years. So you can find us in these different states. If you want to find me, I'm on LinkedIn. Albert Gutierrez is my name. Our group, or you can also find us at www.budmary.com, and we're on LinkedIn as well under the handle BudMary. So,
BudMary.com. We'll certainly put that in the show notes and your LinkedIn profile too, so people can reach out to you and learn more about all the wonderful things that you're doing. Just want to thank all the listeners for joining us today, and we'll see everybody next time on the Cannabis Success Show.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Enjoy this podcast? Visit our website, anderscpa.com/virtual-CFO-cannabis to get more tips and strategy for achieving business success in the cannabis industry.